Welcome, and thank you for settling in with us tonight. Find a comfortable position, allow your body to sink gently into wherever you are resting, and let your breathing slow to its own natural, unhurried rhythm. There is nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to be. Simply rest, breathe, and allow the quiet wonders of the universe to carry you softly towards sleep. Tonight, we are going to take a long and peaceful journey through the extraordinary world of robots, drifting quietly from the hushed corridors of hospitals, where mechanical hands perform surgeries of breathtaking precision, to the cold and silent plains of distant planets, where tireless rovers leave the very first marks of human curiosity upon ancient dust, letting each soft and distant fact wash gently over you like a slow, warm tide. These are not the loud, hurried machines of science fiction. These are quiet instruments of care and discovery, moving with patience, with purpose, and with a kind of gentle determination that mirrors, in its own way, the slow and steady rhythm of a mind drifting peacefully toward rest. 100 facts await you this evening, 100 moments of wonder, drawn from the operating rooms of our greatest hospitals and the vast, unhurried silence of space itself. So let your eyes grow heavy, let your thoughts grow still, and allow the soft hum of progress to carry you gently through the night. The robot that holds a surgeon's hand still. Somewhere in a hospital right now, a surgeon is performing an operation without ever directly touching the patient. Instead, their hands rest on a set of silk-smooth control handles, and a robot translates every tiny movement into something even more precise, filtered and steady, as if the machine itself is breathing out the tremors that human hands naturally carry. This remarkable system is called the Vinci surgical system, and it was first approved for use in the United States by the Food and Drug Administration in the year 2000, making it now over 2 decades old and still one of the most widely used robotic surgical platforms on Earth. The robot does not act on its own. It is, in every sense, an extension of the surgeon, a kind of mechanical translation. Layer that takes the surgeon's intentions and makes them quieter, smaller, and more controlled than any unassisted human hand could manage. As of the early 2020s, the Da Vinci system has been used in more than 10 million procedures worldwide, a number so large and so quietly accumulated over years and years of careful use that it is almost difficult to hold in the mind all at once. A robot smaller than a grain of rice. There is a category of robots so small that they exist at the very edge of what the human eye can perceive. Tiny machines, sometimes called microrobots or nanobots, that researchers have been designing to one day travel through the human bloodstream the way a leaf drifts down a slow river. Scientists at institutions like ETH Zurich in Switzerland have developed microrobots measuring less than 1 millimeter in length, capable of being steered through fluid environments using external magnetic fields, guided from outside the body like a ship being navigated by a lighthouse beam it cannot see. These miniature devices have been demonstrated in laboratory settings to carry small payloads, medicine, for instance, directly to targeted cells, which means that in the future, rather than flooding the entire body with a drug that affects everything, a tiny robot might deliver medication only to the cells that need it. The concept has been in development for several decades now, with early foundational papers appearing as far back as the 1990s, and each year the machines grow a little smaller, a little more capable, and a little closer to becoming something that might one day be prescribed like a medication. the rover that has been on Mars for over 20 years. In January of 2004, a small robotic rover named Opportunity touched down on the surface of Mars and began what was planned to be a 90-day mission. And yet, powered by its solar panels and guided by teams of engineers working from Pasadena, California, it kept driving, kept observing, and kept sending data back to Earth for nearly 15 years. Finally going silent in June of 2018 after a planet-wide dust storm covered its solar panels and drained its batteries. During that time, Opportunity traveled a total ground distance of approximately 45.16 kilometers across the Martian surface, which is the farthest any vehicle built by humans has ever driven on another world. A distance that a person walking at a comfortable pace might cover in about 9 hours, but which this small robot achieved one careful, deliberate meter at a time over thousands of Martian days. The rover was roughly the size of a golf cart, weighing about 185 kilograms, and carried a suite of scientific instruments including a rock abrasion tool, spectrometers, and cameras that captured hundreds of thousands of images of a landscape that no human eye had ever looked upon directly. The sheer patience of that machine, or rather, the patience of the people who built it and guided it, is one of those quiet facts that, if you let it settle into you, feels almost like a meditation on what it means to keep going. The robot pharmacist that never makes a mistake. Inside some of the largest hospital systems in the United States, there are robotic pharmacies quietly running day and night, machines that receive a prescription from a physician, locate the correct medication from a vast organized inventory, count out the precise number of pills, seal them in a labeled package, and send them to the appropriate ward, all without a human hand ever touching the medication directly. The University of California San Francisco Medical Center installed one of the early and widely discussed robotic pharmacy systems in 2011, and it reportedly dispensed over 350,000 doses of medication in its first year without a single dispensing error. A statistic that carries a particular kind of quiet weight when you consider that medication errors in traditional pharmacy settings have long been identified as one of the more common types of preventable medical mistakes. These systems use barcode scanners, robotic arms with soft gripper mechanisms, and sophisticated inventory management software to create what is essentially a closed loop of safety, where the medication goes from storage to patient without the accumulated fatigue or momentary distraction that can affect even the most careful human worker during a long shift. The robots do not replace pharmacists, who still verify prescriptions and counsel patients, but they handle the repetitive physical task of dispensing with a consistency that no tired human hand at 2 in the morning could quite match. The deep-sea robot that mapped the Titanic. In the summer of 1986, a remotely operated underwater robot named Jason Jr., a boxy little machine about the size of a large suitcase, tethered to a larger submersible named Alvin, descended nearly 3,800 meters below the surface of the North Atlantic Ocean and became the first mechanical eye to peer into the interior of the RMS Titanic, which had rested on the ocean floor since April of 1912. The robot, developed by the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution in Massachusetts, moved slowly through the ship's corridors, its cameras transmitting back images of staterooms still scattered with the quiet remnants of a world from another century. A chandelier, a staircase banister, a porcelain cup still resting on a shelf. Jason Jr. was only a prototype, a proof of concept of what remotely operated vehicles could accomplish in environments so deep and so cold and so dark that human divers could never survive there without extraordinary protection. And its journey into the Titanic paved the way for an entire generation of increasingly sophisticated deep-sea exploration robots. Today, the descendants of that small machine have explored hydrothermal vents, recovered scientific samples from ocean trenches, and mapped geological features on the seafloor that had gone unobserved since the ocean itself was young. The exoskeleton that helps people walk again. There is a category of medical robot that wraps around the outside of a human body rather than operating within it. These are called exoskeletons, and they are essentially wearable robotic frames that can support, assist, or amplify the movements of a person whose muscles or nervous system can no longer perform those movements on their own. One of the most well-known examples is the Exobionics exoskeleton, which received FDA clearance in the United States in 2012 for use in stroke and spinal cord injury rehabilitation, allowing patients who had lost the ability to walk independently to stand upright and take assisted steps under the guidance of a physical therapist, often for the first time in months or years since their injury. The device weighs approximately 23 kilograms, fits over the user's clothing like an outer shell, and uses a system of sensors, motors, and algorithms to detect when the user intends to shift their weight and then actuates the appropriate joint to facilitate a step, working in concert with whatever residual muscle function the patient may still have rather than replacing it entirely. Clinical studies published in peer-reviewed journals have noted that regular use of such exoskeletons during rehabilitation can lead to measurable improvements in muscle activation, bone density, cardiovascular function, and psychological well-being, because the act of standing and moving in an upright position, even with robotic assistance, engages the body in ways that lying in a hospital bed simply cannot replicate. A robot that can perform eye surgery on a scale invisible to the human eye. The human retina, the thin sheet of light-sensitive tissue at the back of the eye that makes all vision possible, is a structure so delicate that even a skilled surgeon's hand, steadied by years of practice and deep concentration, still trembles at a scale too fine for surgery to ignore. With natural physiological tremors measuring somewhere between 50 and 300 micrometers that can be critically significant when operating on structures measured in hundreds of micrometers or less. To address this biological limitation, researchers at the Johns Hopkins University Whiting School of Engineering developed a robotic system called the Steady-Hand Eye Robot, later refined into the Precieze surgical system in the Netherlands, which filters out the surgeon's hand tremor and allows for movements accurate to approximately 10 micrometers, roughly 1/10 the diameter of a human hair, enabling procedures on the retina that would be essentially impossible with unassisted hands. In 2016, a team at the Oxford Eye Hospital used a robotic system to perform what was reported as the first robotically assisted surgery inside the human eye, carefully removing a delicate membrane from the retina of a patient in a procedure that had previously carried a very high risk of accidental damage from the vibrations inherent in human hands. The future of retinal surgery, researchers suggest, may be one in which the robotic system does not simply assist but actually autonomously navigates certain phases of the procedure while the surgeon monitors and oversees. The the machine performing the most tremor-sensitive steps with a steadiness that biology alone cannot provide. The robot geologist on another planet. NASA's Perseverance rover, which landed in the Jezero crater on Mars on February 18, 2021, carries with it a scientific instrument called Sherlock Short for scanning habitable environments with Raman and luminescence for organics and chemicals, which uses ultraviolet lasers to analyze the chemical composition of Martian rocks at a level of detail that allows scientists to search for biosignatures, the chemical traces that living organisms leave behind in geological records. The rover itself weighs approximately 1,025 kilograms on Earth, about the weight of a grand piano, and is roughly the size of a compact car, fitted with 23 cameras, 2 microphones, and a suite of instruments that collectively make it the most scientifically sophisticated robotic geologist ever sent to another world. Perseverance also carried with it a small helicopter, named Ingenuity, which made history on April 19, 2021, by becoming the first powered aircraft to achieve controlled flight in the atmosphere of another planet, hovering for about 39 seconds at an altitude of 3 meters, in air so thin that it was the equivalent of flying at an altitude of roughly 30 kilometers above Earth's surface. Together, the rover and its tiny companion represent a quiet but profoundly significant milestone in the human story of exploration, a moment when, for the first time, we sent machines to another planet to both drive on its surface and fly through its sky. The robot that lives inside a capsule you can swallow. There exists a medical device so compact and so elegant in its design that a patient can simply swallow it with a glass of water, go about their day in the most ordinary way possible, and then, approximately 8 hours later, pass the device naturally while it has been quietly doing the work of an entire endoscopy, photographing every centimeter of the small intestine, a stretch of tubing inside the human body that measures somewhere between 6 and 7 meters in length and is notoriously difficult to examine with traditional endoscopes. This device is called the PillCam, developed by the Israeli company Given Imaging, later acquired by Medtronic, and it received FDA approval in the United States in 2001, making it one of the earlier examples of a medical robot that functions inside the body completely autonomously without any wires, without any tether, propelled only by the natural movement of the digestive system. The capsule, measuring approximately 11 by 26 millimeters, about the size of a large vitamin tablet, contains a miniaturized camera, LED lights, a battery, and a wireless transmitter. And it captures approximately 2 to 6 frames per second, transmitting those images to a recording device worn by the patient in a soft belt around their waist, which a physician then reviews. Over 4 million PillCam procedures have been performed worldwide, and the technology has since expanded to include versions designed to examine the colon and the esophagus, each capsule engineered with different camera orientations and frame rates suited to the specific anatomy it is meant to travel through. The robot that assembles itself from tiny magnetic cubes. At MIT's Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory, researchers have been working on a concept called modular self-reconfiguring robots, systems made up of many small, identical robotic units that can connect to one another, disconnect, and rearrange themselves into different shapes and configurations depending on the task at hand, like a mechanical organism that can reshape itself the way water fills whatever container it is poured into. One such project, called the M-Block system, uses small cube-shaped modules fitted with internal flywheels and permanent magnets on every face, allowing them to leap, climb, and attach to one another in mid-air. Self-assembling into structures without any central computer telling each individual unit exactly what to do, but instead following simple local rules that lead to complex emergent behavior, the same kind of logic, in a way, that allows individual ants to build entire colonies without any single ant understanding the whole plan. The medical implications of such systems are still largely theoretical, but researchers have proposed that miniaturized versions could one day form temporary internal scaffolds for healing tissue, or reconfigure themselves to navigate complex internal anatomy in search of specific targets. The concept itself is, in the quietest and most deliberate sense, one of the most profound ideas in robotics, the idea that a machine need not be permanently locked into one shape, but can instead become whatever shape the moment requires. The robot that has touched the sun's outer atmosphere. NASA's Parker Solar Probe, a robotic spacecraft no larger than a small car, was launched in August of 2018 on a mission that is, in its own quiet way, one of the most remarkable journeys any human-made object has ever taken, because its destination is the sun itself. Or more precisely, the sun's outer atmosphere, known as the corona, which extends millions of kilometers into space as an ever-shifting veil of superheated plasma and magnetic fields. On December 14, 2021, the Parker Solar Probe became the first spacecraft in history to fly through the corona, passing through a region of space where temperatures can reach several million degrees Celsius. Protected from that extraordinary heat not by the laws of thermodynamics but by a specially engineered carbon composite heat shield approximately 11.43 centimeters thick and coated with a white ceramic paint that reflects the solar energy away from the spacecraft's instruments. The probe travels at speeds that exceed 690,000 kilometers per hour at its closest approach to the sun, making it, as of its record-setting perihelion passes, the fastest human-made object ever created. And yet from a distance it would look like nothing more than a small silver object drifting with incredible, almost unimaginable calm toward the largest and most powerful thing in our solar system. All of the science it gathers, measurements of solar wind, magnetic field data, images of the corona, is radioed back to Earth across a distance that can reach hundreds of millions of kilometers. Each signal arriving like a letter written from a place so far and so strange that it changes, a little, how you think about what a machine is capable of carrying. The robot nurse that lifts patients without tiring. In Japan, a country that has long led the world in the development of robots, designed for human care and interaction, a robot named Robert was unveiled in 2015 by the Riken Research Institute. A machine designed specifically to lift elderly patients from their beds, help them into wheelchairs, or support them as they stood upright, performing tasks that are among the most physically demanding and injury-causing in the nursing profession. Robert weighs approximately 140 kilograms, but its bear-like appearance, rounded, soft-looking, with large, gentle eyes designed to make it less intimidating to the elderly patients it was built to serve, was a deliberate choice by its designers, who understood that the emotional and psychological response of patients to the machine that is caring for them matters as much as the machine's mechanical capability. Japan has particular urgency in developing such systems because of its demographic reality. It has one of the oldest populations in the world, with approximately 28% of its citizens aged 65 or older as of the early 2020s, and a shortage of care workers that is projected to grow significantly in the coming decades. Robot was not the first robot designed for patient lifting, but it was notable for its combination of strength, capable of lifting the weight of a full-grown adult, and its use of soft actuators that could sense and adjust to the patient's position and resistance, making the lift feel gentler than the name or the numbers might suggest. The first robot sent beyond the solar system. Voyager 1, launched by NASA on September 5, 1977, making it older than many of the people watching this video, crossed into interstellar space in August of 2012, becoming the first human-made object to travel beyond the heliosphere. The vast bubble of solar wind and magnetic influence that the Sun projects outward around our entire solar system and entered the quiet and almost incomprehensibly empty region of space between the stars. The spacecraft weighs approximately 721 kilograms and was powered at launch by 3 radioisotope thermoelectric generators, which convert the heat from decaying plutonium-238 into electricity, and which have been producing power for the spacecraft for nearly 5 decades, each year a little less, as the plutonium slowly and predictably decays. But still enough to power a handful of instruments and send a signal home across a distance that, as of 2024, exceeds 23 billion kilometers. The signal from Voyager 1, traveling at the speed of light, takes more than 22 hours to reach Earth, which means that every instruction sent by engineers at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena must be sent almost a day before the engineers know whether it was received, and every response from the spacecraft arrives almost a day after it was transmitted. A conversation conducted with the patience of someone writing letters across an ocean that never ends. Voyager 1 carries with it a golden record, a 12-inch, gold-plated copper disc containing sounds and images selected to portray the diversity of life and culture on Earth. A quiet gesture toward whatever unknown listener might one day, in some unimaginable future, encounter this small machine drifting through the dark. The robot that draws blood more accurately than a human. Drawing blood is one of the most common medical procedures performed every single day in hospitals and clinics around the world, and yet it is also one that, when performed by a human phlebotomist on a patient with small, deep, or rolling veins, can require multiple attempts that are uncomfortable, sometimes cause bruising, and occasionally result in the procedure being delayed or abandoned altogether. A company called Venus Medical has developed a robotic system that uses near-infrared and ultrasound imaging to locate a suitable vein with far greater precision than the human eye can achieve from the surface of the skin, and then advances a tiny needle along a calculated trajectory to achieve a successful draw on the first attempt, with a reported success rate considerably higher than the industry standard for difficult venipuncture cases. The system is not fully autonomous in the sense of operating without human oversight. A trained technician monitors and initiates the procedure, but the act of actually locating and accessing the vein is performed by the machine, which can visualize structures beneath the skin that are completely invisible to the human eye. This kind of robotic assistance in what might seem like a simple and routine task illustrates something quietly important about the future of medicine. That even the smallest and most ordinary procedures, performed billions of times across human history, can be made meaningfully better by a machine that sees with different instruments than a human eye. The robot that lives underwater for months without returning to the surface. The ocean covers approximately 71% of Earth's surface, and yet more than 80% of it remains unmapped, unexplored, and unobserved at any given moment. A fact made somewhat more manageable by a class of robotic vehicles called autonomous underwater gliders, which are long, sleek, torpedo-shaped machines that travel through the ocean for weeks or months at a time without any human on board and without needing to return to the surface for fuel or direction. The Slocum glider, developed by the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution and manufactured by Teledyne Marine, operates by controlling its buoyancy, pumping fluid between internal chambers to make itself slightly heavier or lighter than the surrounding water, which causes it to glide upward or downward while angled wings convert that vertical motion into horizontal travel, consuming almost no energy in the process, like a bird riding a thermal without ever beating its wings. These gliders can operate continuously for 30 days or more on a single battery charge, traveling hundreds of kilometers and collecting data on water temperature, salinity, oxygen content, and ocean currents that is transmitted to researchers whenever the glider briefly surfaces to communicate via satellite. Fleets of these machines are now deployed across every ocean on Earth, quietly gathering the data that underpins our understanding of everything from climate change to the health of marine ecosystems. A vast and largely invisible network of robotic oceanographers, each one drifting through the dark and the cold and the deep with a calm and patient purpose. The robot surgeon that can operate through a single keyhole incision. Traditional open surgery requires a large incision through skin, muscle, and sometimes bone to give the surgeon's hands direct access to the organ or tissue being treated, a necessary but physically significant intrusion that the body must then spend considerable time and energy recovering from. A category of robotic surgery called single incision or single port robotic surgery allows a surgeon to perform an entire complex procedure through a single small opening, sometimes no larger than the width of a finger, by inserting a flexible robotic arm containing multiple articulating instruments and a camera through that single port, with the instruments then unfolding and repositioning inside the body like an umbrella opening. Intuitive Surgical's Vinci single-site system and similar platforms from companies like Robotics were developed specifically for this purpose, and the clinical benefits for patients who qualify for this approach include faster recovery times, reduced post-operative pain, and significantly smaller scars compared to both traditional open surgery and conventional multiport laparoscopic approaches. The engineering challenge of fitting multiple functional surgical tools and a high-definition camera through a single opening small enough to leave a nearly invisible scar is, from a mechanical design standpoint, a problem of remarkable complexity, one that required decades of incremental development in miniaturization, flexible actuation, and real-time imaging before it became a clinically reliable technique. The Antarctic exploration robot that dives beneath ice. Beneath the Antarctic ice sheet, there exist environments of profound scientific interest. Liquid lakes and rivers, hidden from sunlight and insulated from the atmosphere above by kilometers of ice, that may have remained isolated for tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years, making them potential analogues for environments on icy moons like Jupiter's Europa or Saturn's Enceladus, where liquid water might exist beneath an icy shell. NASA and various university research teams have developed robotic vehicles specifically for exploring these sub-ice environments, including a conical robot called Valkyrie, an acronym for Very Deep Autonomous Laser-Powered Kilowatt-Class Yo-Yoing Robotic Ice Explorer, that uses a powerful downward-facing laser to melt its way through the ice shelf, sinking slowly downward through the melt tunnel until it reaches the water below, at which point it transitions into a submarine and explores the underwater environment. The engineering requirements for such a robot are extraordinary. It must survive pressures at the bottom of a subglacial lake, temperatures near freezing, complete isolation from any external power source, and the requirement that it leave no biological contamination in the pristine environment it is entering, because any microorganism carried in from the surface could corrupt the very scientific record the robot is there to read. These missions to the ice represent one of the most ambitious applications of robotic exploration on Earth itself, treating our own planet as if it were another world, because in some of these hidden places beneath the ice, it very nearly is. The robot that helps children with autism learn social cues. A small, roughly humanoid robot called NAO, developed by the French company SoftBank Robotics, standing approximately 58 centimeters tall and weighing about 5.4 kilograms, has been used in therapeutic settings for children on the autism spectrum in dozens of countries around the world, with a growing body of clinical research suggesting that some children who have difficulty maintaining eye contact or responding to social cues from human faces find it easier and less overwhelming to practice those same interactions with a robot first. The NAO robot can speak, gesture, recognize faces, and respond to voice commands, but unlike a human face, it does not have the microsecond emotional fluctuations, the subtle pressure and expectation, the complexity of authentic human social interaction, and for some children, that simplification creates a kind of communicative bridge, a practice space in which social behaviors can be rehearsed in a lower-stakes environment before being transferred to human relationships. Research published in journals including the Journal of Autism and Developmental Disorders has reported measurable improvements in social engagement, eye contact duration, and imitation skills in children who participated in regular sessions with social robots compared to control groups, though researchers are careful to note that robot-assisted therapy is intended to complement, never replace, human-centered therapeutic relationships. The NAO robot has since been used in over 70 countries, in settings ranging from primary school classrooms to clinical therapy suites, and each small white figure that takes a child through a practiced interaction represents one of the quieter and perhaps more unexpectedly humane applications of robotics, using a machine to teach what it means to connect. The robot that explores active volcanoes. The interior of an active volcano is one of the most extreme and hazardous environments on Earth. Temperatures near the magma surface can exceed 1,000 degrees Celsius. Toxic gases including sulfur dioxide and hydrogen sulfide fill the air. And the ground can shift unpredictably as pressure beneath it changes. And yet the scientific information that can be gathered by studying these environments up close is invaluable for understanding volcanic processes, improving eruption prediction, and potentially one day protecting the communities that live near active volcanic systems. In 1994, a spider-legged robot called Dante 2 was deployed into the crater of the active Alaskan volcano Mount Spur by Carnegie Mellon University, descending 30 meters into the crater and collecting gas samples from fumaroles, openings from which volcanic gases escape. Before its tether became entangled and it was recovered by a rescue operation. The mission classified as a partial success but a major advance in the field of teleoperated robotic exploration in extreme terrestrial environments. Subsequent robotic systems designed for volcanic exploration have been built with more robust thermal insulation, better communication systems, and improved locomotion designed specifically for the loose, uneven, chemically hostile terrain of volcanic environments, including systems tested in the calderas of Hawaii's Kalor volcano. The data collected by these machines, gas composition, temperature gradients, seismic readings gathered from within the crater, gives volcanologists a kind of knowledge that simply cannot be obtained from a safe distance on the rim, and each robotic mission into a crater is, in a sense, a conversation with the planet itself conducted through the medium of a machine. The robot that gives real-time feedback during hip. Hip replacement surgery is one of the most commonly performed orthopedic procedures in the world. In the United States alone, approximately 450,000 total hip replacements are performed every year, and the long-term success of the implant depends critically on how precisely the surgeon positions the new hip socket in relation to the patient's unique anatomy. Because even small deviations of a few degrees from the optimal angle can lead to problems including increased wear on the implant, dislocation, or nerve pressure over time. The Marco robotic surgical system, developed by the company Stryker, addresses this precision challenge by creating a three-dimensional model of the patient's specific hip anatomy from preoperative CT scan data, and then providing the surgeon with a haptic boundary during the procedure, a kind of physical resistance feedback in the robotic arm that prevents the cutting instrument from moving outside the pre-planned zone, even if the surgeon's hand should push in that direction. The surgeon remains completely in control of the robotic arm throughout, but the system acts as a kind of navigator and co-pilot, offering real-time tracking of the cutting tool's position relative to the planned anatomy and providing audio and visual alerts if the trajectory begins to deviate. Studies comparing Marco-assisted hip replacements to conventionally performed procedures have found improvements in implant positioning accuracy, and the system has now been used in hundreds of thousands of orthopedic procedures across hospitals in more than 30 countries around the world. The robot that can print human tissue. Bioprinting, the process of using a robotic printing system to deposit living cells, layer by layer, into a three-dimensional structure, is one of the most quietly transformative areas of biomedical research in the early 21st century, with laboratories around the world now routinely printing small samples of human tissue including skin patches, cartilage segments, and vascular networks that function, at least in the short term, like the tissues they are designed to replicate. The process uses specially formulated materials called bioinks, which are mixtures of living cells suspended in a hydrogel scaffold, a kind of molecular framework that gives the printed structure its shape while the cells slowly bind together and begin behaving as they would in the body, communicating with neighboring cells, secreting proteins, and responding to chemical signals. Wake Forest Institute for Regenerative Medicine, one of the leading institutions in this field, has printed skin, bone, cartilage, and muscle tissue, and has published research demonstrating that printed muscle implants can begin to integrate with existing tissue and develop functional connections when implanted in animal models. The long-term ambition, printing entire organs like kidneys or hearts for transplant, eliminating the waiting list that costs lives every year, remains years or perhaps decades away, but the steady, patient accumulation of progress in bioprinting laboratories around the world represents one of those quiet scientific journeys that may one day be looked back on as the beginning of something that changed everything. The robot that flies through Saturn's moon. Titan, the largest moon of Saturn, is a world that has been described by planetary scientists as one of the most Earth-like environments in our solar system despite being utterly alien. It has weather, it has rivers, it has lakes and seas, it has a thick nitrogen atmosphere. But instead of water, its liquids are methane and ethane, and instead of warm blue skies, its atmosphere is a permanent thick haze of orange-brown hydrocarbons that filters the distant sun into something more like deep twilight. NASA's Dragonfly mission, scheduled to launch in the late 2020s, will send a car-sized dual quadcopter rotorcraft, essentially a large autonomous helicopter drone, to fly through Titan's atmosphere, making it the first rotorcraft ever sent to another world beyond Mars and the first planetary mission to an ocean world analog in our solar system. Dragonfly will be able to fly dozens of kilometers between landing sites using Titan's thick atmosphere, which is about 4 times denser than Earth's, making flight easier despite the low gravity, to explore geologically diverse regions in search of the complex organic chemistry that may give clues about the chemical processes that preceded the emergence of life on early Earth. Each of Dragonfly's flight legs will be autonomous, pre-planned by scientists on Earth but executed by the spacecraft itself, since the communication delay between Earth and Saturn at certain orbital positions can exceed 90 minutes. Making real-time human navigation completely impractical and requiring the robot to be trusted to navigate its alien sky entirely on its own. The robot that reads your heartbeat through a wall. Researchers at MIT's Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory have developed a device called EQRadio, a wireless monitoring system that can measure a person's heartbeat and breathing rate from the other side of a wall by transmitting low-power radio frequency signals through the wall and analyzing the tiny changes in the reflected signal caused by the motion of the person's chest as they breathe and as their heart beats. Motions measured in millimeters, detected through solid material, without any sensor touching or near the person being monitored. The technology works by emitting radio waves roughly 1,000 times weaker than a standard Wi-Fi signal, which pass through walls and reflect off the human body, with each heartbeat causing a measurable displacement of the chest on the order of about ½ centimeter that the system can detect and isolate from background motion using algorithms that have been trained to recognize the distinct signature of cardiac movement. Published research has demonstrated that the system can measure heart rate with an accuracy within approximately 0.3 beats per minute, comparable to a medical-grade ECG machine, and can even detect cardiac irregularities and distinguish emotional states like excitement and calm from the specific rhythmic patterns of the heartbeat alone. The most immediate applications imagined for this technology include non-contact monitoring of elderly people living alone, intensive care monitoring without the discomfort of wired sensors, and search and rescue situations where robots equipped with this technology could detect survivors in a collapsed building without any direct access to them. The robot that has traveled the most miles in space. China's Yutu-2 rover, the name translates to Jade Rabbit 2, which landed on the far side of the moon in January of 2019 as part of the Chang'e 4 mission, became a significant milestone not only because it was the first spacecraft in history to land on the moon's far side, a hemisphere that permanently faces away from Earth and had never before received a soft landing, but also because of the scientific data it has steadily gathered about a part of the lunar surface that had previously only been imaged from orbit. The far side of the moon is geologically different from the near side. It has fewer of the dark volcanic plains called Maria and more ancient, heavily cratered highland terrain, and Yutu-2 has been examining the composition of the soil and rocks in the South Pole Aitken Basin, one of the largest and oldest known impact craters in the entire solar system. providing data that helps scientists reconstruct what the moon's interior looked like billions of years ago when the impact occurred. Communication with U-2 requires a relay satellite called QCHO positioned at the Earth-Moon L2 Lagrange point. Because the far side of the moon is never visible from Earth and no radio signal can travel around the lunar body directly, meaning every command sent to the rover must first travel to the relay satellite and then be forwarded down to the moon's surface. The rover has exceeded its designed operational life significantly and continues to move, measure, and transmit, adding to a growing archive of data about the moon's most mysterious and least visited hemisphere. The robot that performs spinal surgery with sub-millimeter accuracy. The human spine is one of the most complex and delicately balanced structural systems in the body. 33 vertebrae stacked in a precise curve, separated by discs of fibrocartilage, through which the spinal cord passes in a protected channel, and from which nerve roots branch out to every region of the body, and spinal surgery, which often involves drilling into specific vertebrae to place screws, remove bone, or decompress nerves, requires an accuracy measured in fractions of a millimeter to avoid touching structures that, if damaged, can cause lasting neurological consequences. The Mozor Renaissance and its successor, the Mozor X robotic guidance system, developed by an Israeli company and later acquired by Medtronic, uses preoperative imaging and intraoperative tracking to position a targeting arm at the precise angle and depth required for each individual screw placement, so that the surgeon drilling through that guide is essentially following a robotic blueprint rather than relying solely on real-time visual estimation and tactile judgment. Clinical studies comparing robot-guided pedicle screw placement to freehand techniques have reported that robotic guidance achieves clinically acceptable screw placement in approximately 98% of screws placed, compared to rates that can vary more significantly with freehand technique depending on the complexity of the anatomy and the experience of the surgeon. The system has been used in over 50,000 spine procedures across hospitals in more than 50 countries, and each procedure represents a quiet collaboration between a human surgeon's judgment and clinical experience and a machine's absolute, unwavering geometric precision. The robot that lives in your veins, theoretically. The concept of medical nanobots, autonomous robotic devices operating at the scale of nanometers or micrometers, navigating through the human bloodstream to perform diagnostic or therapeutic functions, has been a subject of scientific research and theoretical modeling for several decades, with foundational work laid by physicist Richard Feynman in his famous 1959 lecture, "There's Plenty of Room at the Bottom," in which he imagined machines small enough to be swallowed and guided to specific targets within the body. While fully autonomous nanobots of the kind depicted in science fiction remain beyond current engineering capability, researchers have achieved remarkable milestones along the path toward them, including the development of DNA origami robots, structures folded from strands of synthetic DNA into specific three-dimensional shapes that have been demonstrated in laboratory settings to carry and release specific molecules in response to chemical triggers, functioning essentially as programmable drug delivery capsules at the nanoscale. A study published in Nature Nanotechnology in 2018 demonstrated that DNA nanobots injected into mice could seek out tumor blood vessels specifically, recognizing molecular markers on the tumor's endothelial cells, and then unfold to release a clotting agent that cut off the blood supply to the tumor without affecting the surrounding healthy vasculature. A level of targeting precision that would be essentially impossible to achieve with conventional systemic drug delivery. The engineering challenges remaining, navigating the immune system's constant surveillance and removal of foreign particles, achieving reliable propulsion in the complex rheological environment of blood flow, and ensuring the robots can perform their intended function and then be safely excreted, are substantial, but the research community approaching these challenges grows more capable every year. The robot that helped map the moon before Apollo. Before any human being set foot on the moon in July of 1969, NASA sent a series of robotic spacecraft called the Surveyor probes to land on the lunar surface and perform the first systematic close-up study of the moon's terrain and soil properties. Because one of the genuine scientific uncertainties of the early 1960s was whether the moon's surface was covered in a deep layer of fine dust into which a spacecraft, or an astronaut, might simply sink and be swallowed. Between 1966 and 1968, 5 of the 7 Surveyor spacecraft successfully landed on the moon, each one touching down with retro-rockets and then transmitting thousands of photographs and scientific measurements back to Earth, including data from a soil mechanics sampler that pushed a small instrument into the lunar soil to measure its bearing strength. Surveyor 3 landed in the Ocean of Storms in April of 1967, and in November of 1969, a little over 2 years later, the crew of Apollo 12 landed close enough to walk to Surveyor 3 and bring parts of it back to Earth for study, making the probe and the astronauts part of the same continuous thread of human exploration that spanned the gap between robotic and human presence on another world in a way that has not been replicated since. The photographs transmitted by the Surveyor spacecraft were among the first detailed images of another world's surface ever seen by human eyes, and the quiet, gray landscape they revealed was so different from anything on Earth that it required a whole new vocabulary to describe. The robot that assists in radiation therapy for cancer. The CyberKnife is a radiation therapy system that represents a remarkable convergence of robotics, imaging, and oncology. It is, essentially, a robotic arm that carries a miniature linear accelerator, a device that generates a highly focused beam of radiation, and can position that beam from an almost unlimited number of angles relative to the patient, allowing it to deliver radiation to a tumor from hundreds of directions throughout a treatment session while constantly tracking the tumors. Position and adjusting the beam in real time to compensate for the patient's breathing, which would otherwise cause a lung tumor, for example, to drift in and out of the treatment field with every breath. Developed by Accuray and first cleared by the FDA in 1999, the CyberKnife uses a combination of X-ray imaging and predictive modeling software to track the tumor's position 10 to 40 times per second, correlating the tumor's location to the patient's breathing pattern and predicting its position ahead of time so the robotic arm can lead the tumor rather than chase it, maintaining millimeter-level accuracy throughout the entire treatment. The system has been used to treat tumors in the brain, spine, lung, liver, pancreas, and prostate, organs whose locations within the moving, breathing body make traditional radiation delivery particularly challenging, and because it can deliver higher, more precise doses of radiation per session than conventional radiotherapy. Some treatment courses can be completed in 1 to 5 sessions rather than the 30 or more sessions that conventional approaches often require. As of 2024, more than 1.3 million patients worldwide have been treated with CyberKnife systems installed in hundreds of facilities across the globe, making it one of the most widely deployed robotic cancer treatment platforms in existence. The underwater robot that swims like a fish. For decades, underwater robotic vehicles have been propelled by spinning propellers, functional but also loud, turbulent, and disruptive to the marine environments they are sent to observe. A growing field of research in bio-inspired robotics has produced a new generation of underwater robots that move not with propellers but with undulating tails, flexible fins, or body shapes directly modeled on marine animals, with the goal of creating machines that move through water more quietly, more efficiently, and more naturally than any propeller-driven vehicle can. MIT's Biomimetic Robotics Laboratory has developed several such machines, including a robotic tuna and a soft robotic fish called Sophie, which was tested in the coral reef environments of Fiji in 2018, where it swam alongside real fish at depths of up to 18 meters, communicating with its operator via acoustic signaling and capturing video of marine life that appeared remarkably undisturbed by its presence, a significant advantage over conventional ROVs, which can scatter marine animals with their noise and turbulence. The soft body of Sophie is made largely from silicone, a material that flexes and bends like muscle tissue, actuated by pumping water between inflatable chambers that expand and contract to produce the undulating tail motion, with the entire robot measuring about half a meter in length and weighing approximately 770 grams, compact enough to fit in a backpack and be deployed by a single diver. The applications of such bio-inspired underwater robots extend from marine biology and coral reef monitoring to surveillance and the inspection of underwater infrastructure like pipelines and ship hulls. The first robot to win a chess match against a world champion. While not a medical or planetary exploration robot, the story of machine intelligence in chess is deeply intertwined with the history of robotic and artificial reasoning systems that now underpin much of what modern medical AI can do. And it begins with IBM's Deep Blue, a chess-playing computer system that on May 11, 1997, defeated the reigning world chess champion Garry Kasparov in a 6-game match, becoming the first computer system ever to defeat a world chess champion under standard chess tournament conditions. Deep Blue was not a robot in the traditional physical sense. It did not move the pieces itself, but it was a system capable of evaluating approximately 200 million chess positions per second, using a combination of specialized hardware, pre-programmed opening books, and evaluation functions refined through analysis of thousands of grandmaster games to choose moves that no human opponent could reliably predict or counter. Kasparov won the first match in 1996 but lost the rematch in 1997, and his description of certain of Deep Blue's moves as displaying a kind of alien intelligence, not because the machine was creative in the human sense, but because it evaluated consequences over horizons far beyond what a human mind can hold in working memory, anticipated many of the later conversations about artificial intelligence in medicine, where machine systems can hold and evaluate vastly more patient data, imaging, parameters, and diagnostic possibilities simultaneously than any single human clinician. The 1997 match is now considered a cultural and technological milestone, a moment when the boundary between human and machine cognition began its long and ongoing process of gentle renegotiation. The robot performing minimally invasive heart surgery. The human heart is approximately the size of a fist and lies deep within the chest cavity, protected by the rib cage and surrounded by delicate structures including the pericardium, coronary arteries, and both lungs. Traditionally, repairing defects in the heart required cracking the sternum, spreading the ribs, stopping the heart entirely, and connecting the patient to a cardiopulmonary bypass machine that oxygenates the blood artificially during the procedure. Robotic surgical systems have now made it possible to perform a growing range of cardiac procedures, including mitral valve repair, atrial septal defect closure, and coronary artery bypass grafting on certain patients, through small incisions between the ribs without opening the sternum at all, using cameras and robotic instruments inserted between the ribs to give the operating surgeon a magnified, three-dimensional view of the beating heart interior, while instruments no larger than the tip of a finger make the delicate repairs. The advantages for the patient who qualifies for a robotic approach include shorter hospital stays, faster return to normal activity, less blood loss, lower infection risk, and significantly less post-operative pain compared to open chest surgery, because the chest wall musculature and the sternum have not been cut and must therefore not heal from a large traumatic incision. Robotic cardiac surgery represents only a small fraction of all cardiac procedures currently performed worldwide. But the fraction is growing steadily as the technology matures, more surgeons are trained, and the evidence base supporting specific robotic approaches expands through clinical trials and long-term outcome studies. The robot that can detect cancer in a scan better than a radiologist. Artificial intelligence systems trained on vast collections of medical imaging data have now demonstrated the ability to detect certain cancers, particularly lung, breast, and skin cancers, with accuracy that equals or, in some studies, exceeds that of experienced human radiologists reviewing the same images, a finding that has generated significant scientific interest, careful clinical study, and thoughtful debate about the appropriate role of AI in diagnostic medicine. Google's DeepMind developed an AI system trained on approximately 45,000 chest CT scans that, in a study published in Nature Medicine in 2019, detected lung cancer in CT scans with an area under the curve performance of 94.4% and reduced both false positive rates, scans flagged as showing cancer when they did not, and false negative rates, scans showing cancer that were missed, compared to a panel of 6 radiologists reviewing the same images. The system was particularly notable for its ability to compare a current CT scan to a prior scan from the same patient and identify subtle changes in small nodules that might signal early growth, a task that requires simultaneously holding 2 complex 3-dimensional image sets in working memory and detecting differences between them that might be only a few millimeters in size across hundreds of image slices. These systems are not intended to replace radiologists but to function as a second reader, a tireless, consistent additional layer of review that does not get fatigued during a long shift, does not have a particularly busy Monday affecting its concentration, and does not carry the subtle cognitive biases that even the most skilled and conscientious human reader inevitably brings to pattern recognition tasks. The robot that climbs cliffs to study them. Understanding the geological history written into cliff faces and escarpments, the layered record of ancient environments, sea levels, volcanic events, and biological epochs preserved in the composition and arrangement of rock strata is a task that typically requires either a skilled geologist being lowered down a cliff on a rope or a survey being conducted from a significant distance with binoculars and field instruments, neither of which allows the kind of close contact, systematic sampling that tells the richest scientific story. A robotic system called the ROCR, Recurring Oscillation for Climbing Robots, and similar wall climbing robots developed by researchers at institutions including Stanford University and the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory have demonstrated the ability to climb vertical surfaces and even overhanging rock faces using suction, microspine adhesion, where arrays of tiny hooks grip microscopic surface irregularities in rock the way a gecko's foot grips glass, or both simultaneously. JPL has developed wall-climbing robots specifically imagined for future missions to Martian cliff faces and canyon walls, places like the layered interior walls of Valles Marineris, the largest canyon system in the solar system, which reaches depths of up to 7 kilometers and may preserve hundreds of millions of years of Martian geological history in its exposed strata, waiting for a machine small enough and nimble enough to climb its walls and read its layers. The development of reliable cliff-climbing robots for geological survey is one of those fields where the engineering challenges maintaining adhesion on unpredictably textured, dusty, and friable surfaces are nearly as complex as the scientific questions the robots are built to answer. The robot that monitors forest health from the air. Forests cover approximately 31% of the Earth's land surface, and monitoring their health, detecting drought stress, disease, pest infestation, illegal logging, and changes in species composition. Across these vast scales has traditionally required either expensive and logistically complex helicopter and aircraft surveys or the interpretation of broad satellite imagery that lacks the resolution to detect the kinds of early-stage stress that, if caught, can allow intervention before large portions of the forest are lost. A growing network of drone-based monitoring systems, operated both by research institutions and conservation organizations, is now routinely deployed over forests in the Amazon, the boreal regions of Canada and Siberia, and the tropical forests of Southeast Asia, using hyperspectral cameras that can detect the specific wavelengths of light reflected by stressed or diseased leaves even before any visible discoloration is apparent to the human eye, providing an early warning system that works at the speed and resolution that forest management requires. The University of Maryland and organizations including Global Forest Watch have been developing automated systems that combine drone-collected hyperspectral data with satellite imagery and machine learning algorithms to map canopy health at scales ranging from individual trees to hundreds of square kilometers, with the goal of providing forest managers and conservation scientists with near real-time information about what is happening in forests that are often too large and too remote for regular human survey. The robots that monitor forests do not plant them or water them or protect them. That work remains human, but they serve as the patient, systematic observers that tell the humans who care about these forests what they need to know and where they need to look. The robot used in reconstructing a patient's face. Reconstructive facial surgery performed following trauma, cancer resection, or congenital anomalies requires the surgeon to replace or rebuild bone and soft tissue in one of the most anatomically complex and aesthetically significant regions of the human body, where millimeter-level accuracy in reconstruction determines not only functional outcomes like bite alignment and airway patency, but also the patient's appearance in a way that can profoundly affect their sense of identity and well-being. Robotic milling systems, computer-controlled cutting machines guided by three-dimensional models of the patient's anatomy derived from CT scans, have been adapted to carve synthetic bone grafts and titanium implants to precisely match the geometry of the defect they are designed to fill, producing implants that fit the patient's unique anatomy in a way that handcrafted implants simply cannot replicate with equivalent consistency. The process begins weeks before surgery, when engineers use the patient's imaging data to design a digital model of the missing or damaged bone, which is then sent to a milling robot that carves the implant from a solid block of material, medical-grade titanium, porous polyethylene, or hydroxyapatite, to tolerances measured in hundredths of a millimeter. The result, placed into the patient during surgery, fits as precisely as a key fits a lock, restoring facial symmetry with a degree of technical accuracy that decades of purely manual technique could achieve only in the hands of the most experienced surgeons working under the most favorable conditions. The robot that sailed across the Atlantic Ocean alone. In 2021, a small autonomous surface vessel called the Mayflower Autonomous Ship, named after the historic vessel that carried the Pilgrim settlers from England to Plymouth, Massachusetts, in 1620, successfully crossed the Atlantic Ocean from Plymouth, England, to Halifax, Canada, becoming the first uncrewed vessel to complete a transatlantic crossing entirely under autonomous control, without any human on board and without any remote operator providing real-time navigation decisions. The vessel, roughly the size of a large powerboat at about 15 meters in length, was powered entirely by solar energy and carried no fuel other than what the sun provided, navigating autonomously using a suite of cameras, radar, lidar, and an AI system that could recognize and respond to other vessels, weather conditions, and maritime hazards in real time, following the rules of the sea without a captain. The crossing took approximately 3 weeks, longer than planned due to mechanical issues and weather, and during that time the ship transmitted regular position and sensor data back to researchers at IBM and Promare, the project's organizers, while making all moment-to-moment navigational decisions entirely on its own. Beyond its symbolic resonance with the historical voyage that shares its name, the Mayflower autonomous ship demonstrated that surface vessels can now navigate autonomously across ocean-scale distances, opening the possibility of future robotic ocean survey vessels that could monitor sea temperature, chemistry, and weather continuously across the globe's shipping lanes and open ocean at a fraction of the cost of crewed research vessels. The robot that builds its own maps underground. The Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, ran a series of robot challenges between 2019 and 2021 called the DARPA Subterranean Challenge, in which teams from universities and robotics companies around the world competed to develop robotic systems capable of autonomously navigating and mapping underground environments including mine tunnels, urban underground infrastructure, and cave networks, without GPS, without pre-existing maps, and without significant human intervention. During the mission, the challenge was designed to push the state-of-the-art in autonomous navigation, simultaneous localization and mapping, SLAM, and multi-robot coordination, because underground environments are some of the most difficult for robots to navigate. They are dark, the geometry is unpredictable, GPS signals do not penetrate the rock overhead, and the surfaces are uneven and may be structurally unstable. The winning team, Team Cerberus, used a combination of legged robots and aerial drones that could work together, with the aerial robots scouting ahead in larger tunnels and the legged robots climbing rubble and squeezing through tight passages, all of them communicating with each other and building a shared three-dimensional map that was transmitted back to a surface base station in near real time. The potential applications of this technology are broad and quiet in the most human sense: finding survivors in collapsed mine shafts, mapping the structural integrity of aging urban utility tunnels, or exploring lava tubes on the Moon and Mars, underground spaces that might one day provide natural shelter for human explorers because they offer protection from radiation and the temperature extremes of the surface. The robot assisting in childbirth. Childbirth, while one of the most natural processes in human biology, is also one that carries meaningful clinical risk at specific critical moments, and researchers have been developing robotic assistance devices designed not to replace the care of an obstetrician or midwife, but to provide additional physical support and monitoring during those moments where the margin for error is smallest. A device called the Intelligent Obstetric Ventouse, developed by researchers at Imperial College London, uses robotic automation to apply a consistent, measurable, and precisely controlled traction force during vacuum-assisted deliveries, eliminating the variability that can occur when traction is applied manually and providing the clinical team with real-time data on force levels that is useful for both safety and subsequent documentation. Separately, robotic monitoring systems that continuously track fetal heart rate patterns, uterine contraction pressure, and maternal vital signs, and alert the clinical team to deviations from established safe parameters before a human observer might notice the pattern, have been integrated into labor and delivery monitoring in a growing number of hospital systems. The field of obstetric robotics is still in relatively early stages compared to surgical robotics, reflecting the natural caution that surrounds the introduction of automated systems into the moment of birth, but the quiet underlying principle that a machine can hold a consistent measurement and a consistent force more reliably than a tired human hand at 3 in the morning is the same principle that drives robotic assistance in every other area of medicine. The robot that patrols oil pipelines alone. The world's network of oil and gas pipelines stretches for an estimated total of approximately 5 million kilometers, long enough to wrap around Earth more than 120 times. And each kilometer of this infrastructure must be regularly inspected for corrosion, cracks, weld defects, and other forms of degradation that, left undetected, can lead to leaks or failures that are both environmentally damaging and expensive to remediate. A class of robots called pipeline inspection gauges, or PIGs, have been used inside pipelines since the 1960s to clean, inspect, and maintain the interior of pipes while they remain in service, traveling with the flow of the medium being transported and collecting data from magnetic flux leakage sensors, ultrasonic transducers, and video cameras that detect wall thickness variations and surface irregularities invisible from the outside. Modern smart pigs are highly sophisticated robotic systems capable of operating inside pipelines under full operating pressure, traveling distances of hundreds of kilometers in a single run and generating datasets of hundreds of gigabytes that must then be processed by specialized analysis software to identify and categorize every anomaly detected along the entire length of the run. The quiet economic logic of pipeline inspection robots is straightforward. The cost of sending a smart pig through a pipeline is a fraction of the cost of excavating and visually inspecting even a small section of buried pipe by hand, and the data the robot collects is far more comprehensive, consistent, and quantitatively reliable than any human visual inspection could be, making the machine a better steward of these vast, invisible, enormously consequential systems than any alternative currently available. The robot that performed a successful surgery completely on its own. In January of 2022, researchers at Johns Hopkins University announced a milestone that had been working toward for years in the field of robotic surgery. A robot called STAR, the Smart Tissue Autonomous Robot, had successfully performed a bowel anastomosis procedure, the reconnect ion of 2 cut ends of intestine, on a pig operating autonomously without any human guiding the robotic tools in real time, relying instead on its own vision system and pre-programmed surgical protocols to complete the procedure. The suturing of intestinal tissue is considered one of the more demanding tasks in surgical robotics because soft tissue moves, deforms, and bleeds, requiring constant visual reassessment and adjustment that has historically been considered the exclusive domain of human surgical judgment. And STAR's ability to handle that variability autonomously, placing 39 sutures in consistent, appropriately spaced positions around the circumference of the intestinal join, was a significant demonstration of progress in autonomous surgical capability. The research team noted that STAR's results in this specific task were superior on measurable parameters, consistency of suture spacing and needle placement angle, to the results achieved by human surgeons performing the same procedure, though they were equally clear that clinical translation to human patients requires years of additional development, validation, regulatory review, and integration with clinical workflows before autonomous robotic surgery could be considered safe for a human being. The story of STAR is not the story of robots replacing surgeons, but the story of robotics research reaching a level of maturity where the question of autonomous surgical capability is no longer theoretical but technical, and the answer is being assembled slowly and carefully, one validated step at a time. The robot that explores Himalayan glacier. The glacier of the Himalayan range, sometimes called the Third Pole because they represent the largest store of freshwater ice outside of the Arctic and Antarctic regions, cover approximately 40,000 square kilometers and are a critical source of fresh water for hundreds of millions of people across South Asia who depend on the rivers fed by glacial melt. Monitoring these glaciers, measuring their thickness, their flow velocity, their rate of calving, and the changes in their extent over seasons and years, is both scientifically critical and logistically extremely challenging because the terrain is remote, the climate harsh, and the crevasses and ice falls hazardous for human survey teams. Robotic glaciological platforms, including tracked ground vehicles and drones equipped with ice-penetrating radar, GPS, and mass balance instruments, have been deployed on glacier including Gangotri in India and Zemu in Sikkim to gather continuous data about ice thickness and subsurface geometry that informs models of glacier behavior and future water availability. The ice-penetrating radar systems carried by these robots, a technology originally developed for polar ice sheet surveys, work by sending a radio frequency pulse downward through the ice and measuring the time it takes for the reflection from the rock substrate below to return, a simple principle that, when applied systematically along a grid of measurement lines across a glacier's surface, produces a detailed map of ice thickness that allows glaciologists to calculate the total volume of ice stored and track how that volume changes over time. The robot that designs its own body parts. Generative design is a field of computational engineering in which an algorithm, rather than a human designer, produces the geometry of a mechanical component given certain constraints about load requirements, material properties, attachment points, and weight limits, and the results are often organic-looking lattice structures that distribute stress so efficiently that they can be 30 to 50% lighter than a conventionally designed component of equivalent strength, in shapes that no human designer would have reached through intuition alone. In robotics, generative design has been used to design lightweight limbs for prosthetic arms and legs, optimized gripper fingers for industrial robotic arms, and structural components for spacecraft that must endure launch loads while minimizing every gram of mass. Autodesk and other software companies have made generative design tools increasingly accessible, and the aerospace industry has been particularly active in adopting these computer-optimized designs for components in aircraft and satellites where every gram of weight saved has a direct and quantifiable cost benefit. The philosophical implication of generative design is quietly interesting. When a computer algorithm produces a component's geometry optimally, the design is in some sense no one's design. It emerged from a mathematical optimization process that treats the problem as a landscape of possibilities and finds the lowest point, the most efficient solution, without the aesthetic biases, engineering conventions, or mental shortcuts that shape every decision a human designer makes consciously or otherwise. The robot that monitors coral reefs. Coral reefs cover less than 1% of the ocean floor but support approximately 25% of all known marine species, making them among the most ecologically dense and productive environments on Earth. And their health is monitored by marine biologists who must dive repeatedly, catalog what they observe, and return year after year to the same sites to track changes. A process that is physically demanding, time-consuming, and limited in geographic coverage by the number of scientists available to do the diving. Autonomous underwater robots equipped with high-resolution camera arrays and trained machine learning image classifiers are now being deployed on coral reef monitoring missions in locations including the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary, and reef systems in the Pacific and Indian Oceans, where they systematically photograph hundreds of square meters of reef surface per mission and transmit those images to algorithms that can classify coral species. Estimate percentage cover of live versus bleached coral, and flag significant changes since the last survey. The CoralNet platform, developed by researchers at the University of California, San Diego, is one such system, a web-based tool that uses machine learning to automate the analysis of reef survey photographs, reducing what was once weeks of manual annotation to a process that can be completed in hours. These robotic survey systems do not replace marine biologists, who are still needed to design the surveys, interpret the results, investigate anomalies, and make management recommendations, but they dramatically expand the area that can be monitored and the frequency with which that monitoring can occur. The robot that repairs satellites in orbit. When a satellite in Earth's orbit runs out of propellant, its station-keeping thrusters can no longer maintain its position, and it drifts, losing altitude, eventually burning up in the atmosphere or joining the growing catalog of debris, representing the loss of an asset that may have cost hundreds of millions of dollars to design, build, and launch, and whose loss of service affects everything from weather forecasting to communications networks. Northrop Grumman's Mission Extension Vehicle, MEV, program has developed robotic spacecraft specifically designed to dock with satellites that are running low on fuel, take over their orbit maintenance functions using the MEV's own propulsion system, and effectively extend the satellite's operational life by several years. The equivalent of sending a robotic tow truck into orbit to keep a vehicle running that would otherwise have been abandoned. The first MEV mission, MEV-1, successfully docked with the Intelsat 901 communications satellite in February of 2020. The first time two commercial spacecraft had docked in the history of spaceflight, and Intelsat 901 was returned to operational service after having been parked in a graveyard orbit, extending its service life by at least 5 years. The docking procedure, performed autonomously by the robotic spacecraft using a combination of LiDAR sensors, cameras, and guidance algorithms, required the MEV-1 to match the tumbling rate of the non-operational satellite, which was slowly rotating because its attitude control systems had already run down, and then gently but firmly insert a specialized capture mechanism into the satellite's main engine bell, achieving a physical connection between two spacecraft that had been designed decades apart and by different organizations entirely. The robot that detects landmines. It is estimated that between 60 and 110 million active landmines remain buried in the ground across dozens of countries around the world, remnants of conflicts that may have ended decades ago but whose legacy persists in every unmarked field and roadside that communities cannot safely use. Clearing landmines by hand, a process called humanitarian demoning, is extraordinarily slow and extremely dangerous, with human demonists working with metal detectors and probes advancing sometimes only a few square meters per day. A growing range of robotic demoning systems are now deployed by organizations including the Halo Trust and Apopo in countries including Cambodia, Angola, Afghanistan, and Mozambique, where robots equipped with ground-penetrating radar, electromagnetic sensors, and in some cases mechanical flails that detonate surface mines safely can survey and clear land at rates many times faster than human teams working with handheld equipment. The Cameleon system, developed by the Belgian company Scantinel Photonics, uses laser-based sensing technology adapted from military research to detect the trace chemical signatures of explosive materials in the soil, an entirely different approach to the problem that can in principle identify buried explosives without being close enough to be harmed by them. The goal of all these robotic systems is the same: to put a machine between a person and the buried danger, to trade human safety for robotic expendability, and to give communities and farmers the land back, quietly, systematically, 1 meter at a time. The robot that performs dental surgery. Dental implant surgery, the placement of a small titanium post into the jawbone at a specific angle and depth to serve as the root for an artificial tooth, requires the dentist to drill into bone with extraordinary accuracy, because even small deviations from the planned trajectory can result in implants that damage adjacent tooth roots, the inferior alveolar nerve, or the sinus cavity, leading to complications that are uncomfortable, difficult, and costly to address. The Yomi robotic dental surgery system, developed by the company Neosis and cleared by the FDA in 2016, provides haptic guidance to the dentist's drill, meaning it creates a physical resistance that prevents the drill from moving outside the pre-planned trajectory, the same way a router jig guides a woodworking tool to cut along a predetermined path, while the dentist retains complete control of the overall procedure and the pressure applied. Preoperatively, the system uses CBCT, cone beam computed tomography, scan data to generate a three-dimensional model of the patient's jaw, and the dental team uses planning software to determine the optimal position, angle, and depth for each implant based on the bone quality and volume available and the positions of adjacent anatomical structures. Clinical outcomes data comparing Yomi-guided implant placement to freehand technique have shown reductions in implant placement deviation, though the system's adoption has been gradual, in part because dental implant surgery already achieves high success rates with conventional technique in the hands of experienced practitioners, and the incremental benefit of the robotic guidance must be weighed against the cost and workflow changes the system requires. The robot that monitors volcanoes from inside the crater. Traditional volcano monitoring involves placing seismometers, GPS receivers, and gas sensors on the flanks of a volcano at a safe distance from the most active and dangerous zones, which means that the instruments are measuring the volcano's behavior from the outside, like trying to understand what is happening inside a house by measuring the vibrations in its garden wall. Tethered robotic platforms specifically designed for deployment into active volcanic craters have been developed and tested at several research institutions, including systems used to gather gas samples and thermal imaging from within the craters of Erebus in Antarctica, Stromboli in Italy, and Masaya in Nicaragua, where the conditions near the active lava lake include sulfur dioxide concentrations toxic to humans, temperatures exceeding 300 degrees Celsius in the fumarolic zones, and the possibility of sudden explosive activity. The scientific value of data collected from inside the crater rather than from the rim is substantial. Gas composition ratios, particularly the ratio of sulfur dioxide to carbon dioxide, are one of the most reliable short-term precursors of increased eruptive activity, and measuring these ratios directly from the vent rather than from the crater rim gives volcanologists a cleaner, less atmospherically diluted signal. These robotic systems, lowered on cables from the crater rim by winches operated by a remote team, represent one of the more vivid examples of robots doing exactly what robots are most morally significant for doing: going to the places that would be genuinely dangerous or fatal for a human being, and bringing back information that helps protect the human communities living in the shadow of the volcano. The robot trained to recognize human pain. Assessing a patient's level of pain accurately is one of the more persistent challenges in clinical medicine. Because pain is subjective, self-reported pain scales are influenced by a patient's personality and communication ability, and certain patients, including very young children, people with severe cognitive impairment, and patients under anesthesia or sedation, cannot self-report at all, leaving clinicians to make judgments based on behavioral and physiological signs that are less reliable and harder to standardize. Researchers at the University of Pittsburgh and several European institutions have been developing machine vision systems trained on thousands of hours of annotated video of patients experiencing various levels of experimentally induced and clinically documented pain, with the goal of training a neural network to recognize the specific patterns of facial muscle movement, brow lowering, nose wrinkling, cheek raising, eyelid tightening, that constitute what researchers call the pain face, a consistent pattern of expression that appears across cultures and is measurable with a tool called the facial action coding system. Published research has demonstrated that these AI-based pain detection systems can classify pain from facial video with accuracy comparable to trained human nurses in standardized testing conditions, and in certain tasks, particularly consistency across a long monitoring period. The automated system outperforms humans because it does not become habituated to or distracted by the patient's appearance over time. The clinical applications of reliable automated pain monitoring are broad, touching on ICU monitoring, pediatric care, post-operative recovery observation, and the care of elderly patients with dementia who may not be able to articulate that they are in discomfort. The robot that grows plants in space. Growing food in space is one of the most practically significant challenges facing long-duration human spaceflight, because missions to destinations like Mars, which would take approximately 7 months of travel time each way, make resupply from Earth impractical and require either the ability to grow food on board or the ability to carry years of pre-packaged nutrition, with all the mass and volume constraints that implies. NASA's Vegetable Production System, nicknamed Veggie, installed on the International Space Station in 2014, is a plant growth facility that uses LED lighting specifically tuned to the wavelengths most efficient for photosynthesis, a porous growth medium called pillows that delivers nutrients to plant roots in microgravity through capillary action rather than gravity-dependent drainage, and an automated monitoring system that tracks temperature, humidity, and CO2 levels within the growing chamber. In 2015, astronauts aboard the ISS ate the first lettuce grown entirely in space, red romaine lettuce that had been growing for 33 days in the Veggie facility, an event that was widely described as a significant step toward the closed-loop life support and food production systems that will be needed for deep space exploration. More recent experiments on the ISS have grown Mizuna mustard greens, kale, cabbage, radishes, and zinnia flowers, with each growth experiment adding to the body of knowledge about how plants adapt to microgravity, how their root systems behave without the directional cue of gravitational pull, and what adjustments to lighting, moisture delivery, and atmospheric conditions produce the best yields in the unique environment of an orbiting spacecraft. The robot that reads cuneiform tablets. Cuneiform is one of the earliest writing systems in human history, developed by the ancient Sumerians in what is now southern Iraq approximately 5,000 years ago, and it was impressed into wet clay tablets using a reed stylus, producing wedge-shaped marks that recorded everything from astronomical observations to trade receipts to epic poetry. Approximately 500,000 to 2 million cuneiform tablets are estimated to have survived to the present day, held in museum collections and academic institutions around the world. But the number of scholars who can read ancient cuneiform fluently is in the hundreds, a profound bottleneck between humanity and the records of some of its earliest cities. Machine learning systems trained on digitized cuneiform tablets have been developed by research groups including projects at MIT, University College London, and the University of Groningen, which have trained neural networks to recognize cuneiform signs from high-resolution photographic and 3D scan data, and in some cases to assist in translating the most common cuneiform scripts, including Old Babylonian and Neo-Assyrian, with meaningful accuracy on standard tablet texts. The 3D scanning robots used to digitize these tablets work with structured light or laser profilometry to capture the subtle surface topography of the clay, because the wedge impressions in cuneiform are often worn, covered in mineral deposits, or too subtle in shading to photograph reliably. The robotic scanner reads the geometry of the surface rather than its color, producing a digital record that can be enhanced computationally and read by algorithms trained on thousands of previously translated tablets. The robot that delivers medications in hospital hallways. Inside the hallways of hospitals like UCSF Medical Center and Lucile Packard Children's Hospital at Stanford, robotic delivery vehicles navigate autonomously through busy corridors, elevators, and doorways, carrying medications, medical supplies, laboratory specimens, and linens from one part of the hospital to another without any human guiding them, freeing nursing staff, pharmacy technicians, and support workers from the repeated trips between units that consume a significant portion of every hospital worker's shift. The TUG robot, made by the company Ethan, later acquired by ST Engineering, is one of the most widely deployed of these hospital delivery systems, used in more than 500 hospitals across the United States and internationally, navigating using a combination of laser ranging, computer vision, and a preloaded map of the hospital's floor plan that the robot updates in real time as it encounters obstacles like parked equipment carts or groups of people. Each TUG robot can carry loads of up to approximately 450 kilograms and operates 24 hours a day, stopping at predetermined handoff points and communicating with the hospital's pneumatic tube system, automatic doors, and elevators through wireless interfaces built into the hospital's infrastructure. Time-motion studies conducted at hospitals that have deployed autonomous delivery robots have found measurable reductions in the number of trips taken by nursing staff to deliver or retrieve supplies, with some estimates suggesting that nursing time saved by robotic delivery can be reallocated to direct patient care, where it has the most clinical value, in an amount equivalent to several full-time nursing positions per year in a large facility. The robot that builds things on the moon, in theory. The concept of using robots to construct habitats on the moon or Mars in advance of human arrival, a strategy sometimes called Planetary In Situ Resource Utilization or ISRU, involves robotic systems that can mine local materials, process them into usable forms, and then 3D print or otherwise assemble structures from those materials without the need to bring construction materials from Earth, where every kilogram of mass launched to another world costs thousands of dollars in rocket fuel. NASA and the European Space Agency have both funded research programs investigating lunar construction robotics, with particular focus on using the Moon's regolith, the fine layer of soil and crushed rock covering the surface, as a raw material that can be mixed with a binding agent and then 3D printed into structural elements in the shape of interlocking bricks, domes, or walls. The Icon Company, which has already 3D printed houses on Earth using robotic construction systems, partnered with NASA on a project called Project Olympus to develop a construction system adapted for the lunar environment, where the absence of atmosphere, the extreme temperature swings between lunar day and night, and the fine, abrasive nature of the regolith all require purpose-specific engineering solutions that have no Earth analog. The vision of robots landing on the Moon years before any human mission, quietly assembling the radiation-shielded habitat and pressurized laboratory that the astronauts will move into upon arrival, the way a house is prepared before a family moves in, represents one of the most profoundly ambitious robotic engineering challenges humanity has so far seriously proposed to undertake. The robot that listens to trees. Plants, including trees, respond to drought stress by producing ultrasonic acoustic emissions, vibrations in the range of 20 to 200 kHz, above the threshold of human hearing, generated by the cavitation of water columns in the tree's xylem tissue as the water tension increases during periods when the soil moisture is insufficient to meet the tree's transpiration demand. This phenomenon, first described in the scientific literature in the 1960s and intensively studied since, provides a direct acoustic indicator of a plant's hydraulic stress status that can be detected by robotic sensor systems attached to the trunk or branches of a tree. Research groups, including those at the Swiss Federal Institute for Forest, Snow and Landscape Research, WSL, have developed robotic monitoring platforms, combinations of fixed acoustic sensors, environmental monitoring stations, and occasional drone surveys that monitor forest stands continuously over growing seasons, generating data about water stress patterns that tells forest managers and climate scientists how individual trees and whole forest communities are responding to weather anomalies and longer-term climate trends. The combination of real-time acoustic monitoring with satellite-derived vegetation indices and weather station data creates a multi-layered picture of forest water status that is considerably more informative than any single measurement type alone. And the robotic systems that maintain this monitoring over seasons and years without requiring constant human attendance make it practical to collect the kind of long-term, continuous data that biological and ecological science increasingly requires. The robot that provides therapy for depression. The global shortage of mental health professionals. The World Health Organization has estimated that across many low and middle-income countries, there are fewer than one psychiatrist per 100,000 people, and even in high-income countries the demand for mental health services significantly exceeds the supply, has prompted researchers to explore whether conversational AI systems, implemented through robotic or virtual interfaces, can provide a meaningful first-line support function for people experiencing depression, anxiety, or chronic loneliness. Wobot, an AI-powered conversational therapy chatbot developed by researchers from Stanford University and launched commercially in 2017, delivers techniques from cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, through a text-based conversational interface, guiding users through exercises designed to identify and reframe negative thought patterns, monitor mood over time, and practice relaxation and mindfulness techniques. The same basic toolkit of a cognitive behavioral therapist session, made available on demand, at any hour, at no cost beyond the phone subscription. A randomized controlled trial published in the Journal of Medical Internet Research in 2017 found that participants assigned to use Wobot for 2 weeks showed significant reductions in symptoms of depression and anxiety compared to a control group, with measurable changes on validated clinical rating scales in what was a relatively short intervention period. Physical companion robots like Poro, a therapeutic robot shaped like a white baby seal, developed by the Japanese researcher Tokunori Shibata and now used in hundreds of elder care facilities and memory care units in more than 30 countries, have been the subject of randomized controlled trials showing reductions in agitation, anxiety, and depression in elderly patients with dementia, suggesting that the physical presence and tactile interaction of a robot companion produces psychological benefits that a screen alone may not fully replicate. The robot that has climbed Mount Everest by proxy. While no wheeled or legged robot has physically climbed the mountain, a network of robotic environmental monitoring stations has been permanently installed at various elevations on Mount Everest, including at Camp 4 at approximately 7,950 meters above sea level, making them among the highest altitude robotic scientific platforms permanently deployed anywhere on Earth. As part of the National Geographic and Rolex Perpetual Planet expedition that began in 2019. These stations, automated robotic weather and environmental data collection platforms, record temperature, wind speed, humidity, atmospheric pressure, solar radiation, and snow depth continuously, transmitting data via satellite to researchers at ground level who use it to study how high-altitude climate conditions are changing over time. Information with implications not only for the more than 40,000 climbers and trekkers who visit the Everest region each year, but also for the glaciological and hydrological systems that supply water to downstream communities across Nepal and India. The data collected by these high-altitude robotic stations has already yielded findings about the pace of glacial warming and the intensity of jet stream fluctuations at extreme altitude that could not have been reliably obtained from the intermittent manual weather readings that mountaineers had been recording since the early 20th century. And the continuity and precision of the automated record is exactly what long-term climate analysis requires. A machine standing patiently in the cold and wind for years, measuring, recording, and transmitting what it finds. The robot that assists in cataract surgery worldwide. Cataract surgery, the removal of the eye's natural lens when it has become clouded with age, typically replacing it with a clear synthetic intraocular lens, is the most commonly performed surgical procedure in the world, with approximately 10 million cataract surgeries performed globally every year, and it is notable for being both extraordinarily effective when performed well and remarkably sensitive to technical errors, because the lens capsule being operated within is a membrane measured in microns, and any tear or rupture during the procedure significantly complicates the outcome. The CATALYS precision laser system and similar femtosecond laser platforms have robotically automated the most technically demanding steps of cataract surgery. The capsulotomy, the circular incision in the lens capsule, the lens softening, using laser pulses to fragment the clouded lens into pieces that can be removed by aspiration, and the corneal incisions. Performing these steps according to a three-dimensional map of the patient's individual eye anatomy generated by optical coherence. Tomography imaging in the seconds before the procedure begins. Studies comparing femtosecond laser-assisted cataract surgery to conventional manual technique have found improvements in the precision and circularity of the capsulotomy opening, which translates to more predictable positioning of the intraocular lens and, for patients receiving premium multifocal lenses designed to correct both distance and reading vision, more consistent refractive outcomes. The technology has become particularly relevant in the context of global eye health initiatives, because the large volume of cataract surgeries needed in low-income countries to address the burden of cataract-related visual impairment places a premium on surgical systems that reduce variability and complication rates in the hands of surgeons at various experience levels. The robot that folds laundry. The seemingly simple act of folding a piece of laundry represents one of the more surprisingly difficult problems in robotics, because clothing is what engineers call deformable. It has no fixed shape, it crumples, stretches, and responds to gravity differently every time it is picked up, meaning the robot cannot rely on a fixed geometric model of the object it is manipulating but must instead perceive and adapt to the fabric's current, constantly changing configuration in real time. UC Berkeley's Berkeley robot for the elimination of tedious tasks. Robot spent approximately 10 minutes per garment when it first demonstrated robotic laundry folding in 2015. Using reinforcement learning, a trial-and-error approach in which the robot practiced the task thousands of times and received feedback based on its success, to gradually develop a folding strategy that was reliable if not exactly swift. Subsequent research using deep learning approaches, including work published by robotics teams at Columbia University and Google's Robotics Research Division, has significantly reduced the time required for robotic garment manipulation and demonstrated the ability to fold previously unseen garment types without specific retraining. The challenge of laundry folding has become something of a benchmark problem in robotics research precisely because it tests so many fundamental robotic capabilities simultaneously: perception of deformable objects, planning in the face of uncertainty, gentle physical manipulation, and generalization across a wide variety of object geometries. And solving it reliably would represent a meaningful step toward household robots capable of assisting with the genuinely tiring repetitive tasks of daily domestic life. The robot that maps ocean floor mountains. The Mid-Ocean Ridge System, the longest mountain range in the world, stretching approximately 65,000 kilometers across the floor of every ocean on Earth, though almost entirely beneath thousands of meters of water, was not fully recognized as a continuous global feature until the mid-20th century, and vast portions of it remain unmapped at the resolution needed to understand the geological processes driving seafloor spreading, volcanic activity, and the formation of hydrothermal vent systems that support entire ecosystems independent of sunlight. Autonomous underwater vehicles, AUVs, such as the Remus series and the Sentry system, developed by the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, dive to depths of up to 6,000 meters carrying multi-beam sonar arrays that map the seafloor with resolution finer than 1 meter, producing three-dimensional topographic charts of underwater terrain that reveal features: collapsed lava tubes, ancient fault scarps, fields of hydrothermal chimneys that no optical camera can image from the surface and no satellite can see through the water. The Nippon Foundation JEBCO Seabed 2030 project has set an ambitious goal of producing a complete high-resolution map of the entire global ocean floor by the year 2030, a task that relies heavily on AUV surveys supplemented by ship-mounted sonar and data sharing between research institutions and navies worldwide, with robotic mapping platforms doing the deepest, most time-consuming survey work. As of recent estimates, approximately 23% of the global ocean floor has been mapped at high resolution, meaning more than 3/4 of the floor of our ocean remains, at this moment, unseen. The robot that performs remote surgery across a country. In January of 2019, A Chinese surgeon named Dr. Ling Zhipei performed what was reported as the world's first 5G-based remote brain surgery, operating on a patient with Parkinson's disease who was approximately 3,000 kilometers away in Beijing while the surgeon himself was in Sonya, Hainan province. The low latency of the 5G network making real-time robotic control of surgical instruments across that distance feasible for the first time, as earlier 4G networks introduced delays sufficient to make precise remote surgery impractical and potentially unsafe. The latency, the time delay between the surgeon's control movement and the corresponding movement of the robotic instrument at the patient's location, was approximately 2 milliseconds on the 5G connection, compared to the 20 to 100 milliseconds typical of 4G, a difference that might sound small in abstract terms but is, in surgical terms, the difference between a response that feels instantaneous and one that introduces a detectable and potentially consequential lag into every movement. The potential implications of reliable low-latency remote surgery extend far beyond the convenience of operating from a different room. In conflict zones, disaster areas, aboard naval vessels, in remote communities without access to specialist surgeons, and eventually in spacecraft crewed by astronauts who cannot carry one specialist for every surgical contingency. The ability for an expert surgeon to operate robotically from thousands of kilometers away could make a meaningful and direct difference to patient survival. The engineering, regulatory, and ethical frameworks for widespread robotic telesurgery are still being developed, but the technological feasibility has been demonstrated repeatedly in the years since that first 5G procedure. The robot that surfs space debris. Earth's orbital environment has become significantly more crowded over the 7 decades of the space age, with an estimated 27,000 trackable objects, including decommissioned satellites, spent rocket stages, and debris fragments, in orbit as of the early 2020s, along with an estimated 500,000 additional pieces of debris too small to track individually, but large enough to cause serious damage to an operational spacecraft upon impact. The European Space Agency's ClearSpace 1 mission, currently in development for a launch planned in the mid-2020s, will be the first active debris removal mission, a robotic spacecraft that will rendezvous with a specific piece of space junk, a rocket upper stage called Vespa, capture it with a set of robotic arms, and then deorbit with the debris, allowing both the chaser spacecraft and the captured junk to burn up safely in the atmosphere. The technical challenges of capturing an uncooperative tumbling object in orbit, one that was not designed to be captured and has no grapple fixture, is slowly spinning in all 3 axes, and must be matched in relative velocity before any physical contact is attempted, make this one of the most demanding robotic space operations ever attempted, requiring advances in autonomous navigation, computer vision, and contact dynamics that will form the technical foundation for all subsequent debris removal missions. Scientists and space policymakers describe the long-term management of orbital debris as one of the most important challenges for the continued safe use of near-Earth space, because certain orbital shells where debris density is highest are approaching the threshold beyond which collision cascades, in which each collision creates more debris that causes more collisions, could make those orbits unusable for generations. The robot that cleans hospital rooms with ultraviolet light. Healthcare-associated infections, infections that patients acquire during the course of receiving medical treatment, not from the condition that brought them to the hospital, affect an estimated 1.7 million patients in the United States each year, according to Centers for Disease Control and Prevention data. and are caused by pathogens that can survive on environmental surfaces in hospital rooms for hours to days after a patient has been discharged. Ultraviolet C radiation, light at wavelengths between 200 and 280 nanometers, disrupts the DNA of bacteria and viruses, preventing their replication, and several companies including Xenex Lightstrike, TrueD Smart UVC, and UVD Robots have developed autonomous UV disinfection robots that enter an empty hospital room after terminal cleaning by housekeeping staff, navigate to pre-programmed positions throughout the room, and irradiate every surface with UVC light for a calculated period that delivers the dose required to inactivate specific target pathogens, including Clostridium difficile, methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, MRSA, and vancomycin-resistant Enterococcus, VRE, at the concentrations most likely to be present on environmental surfaces. Studies conducted in hospital settings using pre-post analysis and controlled trials have found that implementing UV disinfection robots as part of the terminal cleaning protocol for high-risk rooms, those previously occupied by patients known to carry specific resistant organisms, is associated with significant reductions in subsequent room occupant acquisition rates for those organisms. The robots themselves are designed with safety interlocks that prevent them from activating when any person is in the room, and they communicate with each other and the hospital's electronic record system to track which rooms have been disinfected, when, and to what UV dose. The robot that learned to cook from watching YouTube. Researchers at the University of Maryland's Institute for Advanced Computer Studies, in collaboration with colleagues at other institutions, published research in 2015 describing a robotic system that had been trained to learn cooking tasks by watching cooking instructional videos from YouTube, not by being explicitly programmed with step-by-step movement instructions, but by watching human demonstrations and then attempting to translate what it observed into a sequence of robotic actions that replicated the task, using natural language processing to understand the narrative description in the video alongside computer vision to understand the actions being demonstrated. The system, which the researchers named the YouTube cooking robot, could watch a video of someone making a salad or preparing a piece of meat and then attempt to replicate the cutting, spreading, or mixing actions on actual ingredients, generalizing from a human demonstration recorded with a standard camera to a robotic execution in a kitchen environment with different visual characteristics and physical setup. This approach, learning from watching rather than from explicit programming, is called imitation learning or learning from demonstration, and it represents one of the more promising pathways toward general-purpose robotic cooking and household assistance, because the alternative, explicitly programming a robot to handle every possible ingredient, kitchen tool, and recipe variation, is essentially intractable given the staggering diversity of foods, preparations, and kitchen environments that a truly useful domestic robot would need to navigate. The Google DeepMind research group published follow-up work in the 2020s on robotic manipulation learned from large video datasets that brought this capability significantly closer to practical household deployment. The robot that monitors the health of power lines. The electrical transmission and distribution grid, the system of towers, cables, transformers, and substations that carries electricity from generating stations to homes and businesses, is one of the most extensive infrastructure networks in existence, with the United States alone having approximately 200,000 miles of high-voltage transmission lines and 5.5 million miles of local distribution lines, all of which must be regularly inspected for conditions including conductor sag, damaged insulators, vegetation encroachment, corroded hardware, and heating anomalies that can indicate failing connections, the electrical transmission and distribution grid, the system of towers, cables, transformers, and substations that carries electricity from generating stations to homes and businesses, is one of the most extensive infrastructure networks in existence, with the United States alone having approximately 200,000 miles of high-voltage transmission lines and 5.5 million miles of local distribution lines, all of which must be regularly inspected for conditions including conductor sag, damaged insulators, vegetation encroachment, corroded hardware, and heating anomalies that can indicate failing connections. Utility companies have traditionally inspected these lines using either helicopter surveys, where an inspector leans from the helicopter door with binoculars, or ground-based visual inspection, both of which are expensive, time-consuming, and limited in their ability to detect subtle electrical faults that are not visible to the eye. Fixed-wing drones and multirotor drones equipped with high-resolution optical cameras, thermal imaging cameras, and in some cases LiDAR sensors are now routinely deployed by utilities including American Electric Power, Eversource, and Pacific Gas and Electric to survey transmission lines at a fraction of the cost and time of conventional helicopter surveys, with the thermal camera detecting hot spots in connectors and insulators that are invisible in the optical image but represent early-stage failures that, if left unaddressed, can eventually cause power outages or, in the worst cases, equipment fires. The robotic inspection workflow generates thousands of images and gigabytes of thermal data per mission, which are then processed by machine learning algorithms that automatically flag anomalies and rank them by severity, giving maintenance crews a prioritized list of locations requiring attention rather than thousands of images to review manually. The robot that is mapping the human brain. The Human Connectome Project, a major scientific initiative funded by the National Institutes of Health and carried out by a consortium of American universities beginning in 2009, has been using robotic scanning infrastructure and automated image analysis to map the structural and functional connections between every region of the human brain, creating what researchers call a connectome. A comprehensive map of neural wiring that is to neuroscience what the genome sequence was to genetics. The project uses specialized MRI machines, electron microscopy, and robotic tissue processing and slicing systems to generate the enormous datasets required. A single cubic millimeter of human brain tissue, when imaged at the resolution needed to visualize individual synapses, produces approximately 1 petabyte of data, roughly equivalent to all the text stored in the entirety of the United States Library of Congress. Google Research collaborated with the Lichtman Laboratory at Harvard University to produce a landmark dataset published in 2021. A map of approximately 1 cubic millimeter of human cortical tissue, containing 57,000 cells, 150 million synapses, and several kilometers of axon wiring, which was generated through a combination of electron microscopy and robotic tissue processing and represents the most detailed map of human brain circuitry ever produced. The full human connectome, mapping the approximately 86 billion neurons and 100 trillion synaptic connections in a complete human brain, is a goal that current technology cannot yet achieve, but the robotic systems and computational methods being developed in pursuit of it are advancing at a pace that makes it imaginable within the lifetimes of some of the researchers currently pursuing it. The robot that has walked more hours than any human. Boston Dynamics Atlas Robot, a bipedal humanoid robot that stands approximately 1.5 meters tall and weighs about 89 kilograms, has been developed through iterative generations since its first public introduction in 2013, and while it was not designed as a medical or exploration robot per se, it represents the most publicly recognized development platform for the kind of mobile, dexterous robot that may eventually serve in both domains. The Atlas robot's balance system uses a whole-body control algorithm that models the robot as a floating base with constrained contacts, continuously recalculating how to distribute forces across its feet and body to maintain balance under dynamic conditions. Running, jumping, doing backflips, manipulating objects, in ways that would require completely different programming if the robot were operating on a different terrain or encountering a different perturbation. The amount of cumulative walking and movement testing that Atlas has undergone, thousands of hours of laboratory testing, indoor trials, outdoor rough terrain navigation, and staged performance demonstrations, makes it one of the most extensively exercised walking robot platforms in existence, with the engineering data from each trial informing subsequent design improvements in the motors, sensors, control software, and mechanical structure of the platform. The physical capabilities demonstrated by Atlas in its public videos, parkouring over obstacles, performing coordinated gymnastic sequences, navigating rubble, are research demonstrations rather than operational deployments, but they represent the frontier of what mobile robotic systems are currently capable of in terms of whole-body dynamic movement. The robot that has mapped Chernobyl's interior. The interior of the damaged reactor building at Chernobyl, the site of the 1986 nuclear accident in what is now Ukraine, remains too radioactively contaminated for sustained human presence, with radiation levels in certain areas exceeding what would be safe exposure within a matter of minutes, which means that the ongoing monitoring, assessment, and management of the damaged structure has relied heavily on robotic systems capable of operating in environments that would be dangerous for human workers. Since the 1980s, a succession of specially shielded robotic vehicles, some developed by Robotic, now a subsidiary of Northrop Grumman, others by European nuclear industry partners, have been deployed inside the damaged reactor building to map radiation levels, take samples, assess the structural condition of the destroyed reactor core, and observe the elephant's foot, a mass of solidified corium, a mixture of nuclear fuel, graphite, and reactor structural materials in the basement of the building that remains intensely radioactive. More recently, a team of engineers from the UK's National Nuclear Laboratory deployed a small submersible robot into the flooded basement of Unit 3 at Chernobyl in 2019 to map an area that had been inaccessible since the accident, finding that the radiation levels in that particular area were lower than feared, which informed decisions about how the building's remaining radioactive materials might be safely managed. The robots that work inside Chernobyl are not glamorous machines. They are working tools, designed for reliability and radiation hardness rather than elegance. But each mission they complete extends the boundary of what can be known and managed about one of the most consequential industrial accidents in human history. The robot that performs robotic-assisted bronchoscopy. The lung contains approximately 300 million alveoli arranged in a branching tree of airways that begins with the trachea and subdivides through approximately 23 generations of branching passages before reaching the smallest air sacs, a structure of extraordinary complexity that makes navigating to a specific small nodule deep in the peripheral lung one of the more challenging tasks in pulmonary medicine. Because the conventional bronchoscope, steered by a clinician's hands, can reliably reach only the first few generations of airways before the passages become too small and too tortuous to navigate reliably. The Monarch robotic bronchoscopy platform, developed by Auris Health, acquired by Johnson & Johnson, and the ION system, developed by Intuitive Surgical, are robotic bronchoscopy systems that use a combination of real-time electromagnetic tracking, CT-based airway mapping, and robotic drive mechanisms to navigate a very thin flexible catheter to peripheral lung nodules deep in the lung tree that were previously only reachable by more invasive surgical or CT-guided needle biopsy procedures. By reaching these nodules robotically and obtaining tissue samples for pathological analysis, these systems potentially allow lung cancer to be diagnosed at an earlier stage, when it is still small and peripheral and more amenable to curative treatment, rather than waiting for the nodule to grow large enough to be reached by conventional bronchoscopy or to require open surgical biopsy. The clinical significance of early lung cancer detection cannot be overstated. 5-year survival rates for lung cancer detected at the earliest stage are approximately 65%, compared to less than 5% for cancer detected at the most advanced stage. A difference that is, in many cases, the difference between a diagnosis and a cure. And so, dear listener, we have traveled together across operating rooms and ocean trenches, through the craters of Mars and the corridors of hospitals, across the frozen plains of Antarctica and the invisible interior of the human eye. 100 quiet, extraordinary facts, each one a small window into the immense and patient world that human curiosity and human engineering have built together. You need not remember a single one of them. They have already done their gentle work, carrying your mind on a long and wandering journey that has brought you here, to this soft and quiet moment, where the only thing left to do is simply let go. Let the words dissolve, let the images fade, let your body sink a little deeper into wherever you are resting, and know that somewhere in the world right now, in an operating room, on a distant planet, at the bottom of the sea, a small machine is doing its patient, extraordinary work, and the world is, in its own quiet way, a little more wonderful for it. Sleep well.